the Book of Boba Fett's episode 7 ends on a very definitive note. Will there be a season 2 or not? Find out in this next video.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's predictions and speculation video. Although it is not necessarily a predictions and speculation video for season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett, we are going to be giving our predictions and speculation on whether there will be a season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett and what possibly could happen from a story perspective. Let's talk about some of the loose ends that are left here at the end of season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, and whether there is a future for this show. But before we get started, hit that like button down below, subscribe to the channel for Star Wars content minimum 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and comment below. Let us know what you thought of Book of Boba Fett Season 1, whether you think there will be a Season 2, what you could see happening in Season 2. Let us know down in the comments, and we'll get back to you and respond, and keep that conversation going down there. Again, if you haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 7 or any of the Book of Boba Fett at this point, you're probably going to want to avoid this video because we will be talking spoilers specifically about the entire show, but also Chapter 7. So if you haven't seen it, you've been warned. So to get into this, like you said, it doesn't have too open-ended of an ending, and I was kind of surprised by that, with no real plot threads dangling. At least the major plot thread that's dangled is leading directly into what the next show in this Mandoverse will be, which is The Mandalorian Season 3 coming out in December. So that is the main plot thread that is left here for the next part of this series, really, if we're going to call Book of Boba Fett kind of a Season 2.5 of The Mandalorian. That is the next piece. But I think in general, there's a lot of things that aren't wrapped up in this show, at least from a character perspective. There's some plot points here that are just kind of grazed over, and it might just be the storytelling. But I like to be a little optimistic and hope that maybe there are some threads here left open. We also do get the end credit scene, which has Cobb Vanth in the Bacta tank and kind of that doctor who worked on the mods. The very cyberpunky doctor is looking like he's going to probably give Cobb Vanth a robotic arm or something to replace his gunshot wound. I mean, there's a little, just in logical terms, there's been a lot of Star Wars characters who are shot and they don't need an arm replacement. Like, is he going to ask Cobb Vanth if he wants a robotic arm before he gives him one? I feel like that's kind of strange.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just seems like another way to like push these modders that really I don't think any of us really like that much outside the creators of the show, unfortunately. But I guess we're gonna give Cobb Vanth some type of robotic body part. So there's that, and we also have the Grogu Mando flyaway. That's gonna be fun. It doesn't really tell us what the story is gonna be about in Mandalorian Season 3. I think we can look at Chapter 5 more so for that. But we're talking about Book of Boba Fett Season 2. And to me, I think there's still an opening to touch on a lot of the themes I wanted touched on in this show, which is a bit more about Boba dealing with his past, about those. Cad Bane would have been the perfect conduit to do so. And there was that part of me that was like secretly hoping that, oh man, maybe he's in the Bacta tank. But I was like, no, you're being delusional at this point. So yeah, there's still an opening for him, for like that story to progress, so where we can touch on some of the themes of Boba dealing with his past. This wasn't really, that's not really, the show wants us to think that's what it's about, but it's not really what it's about. Like Boba still has so many other people out there besides Cad Bane who he has problems with and who would be very upset at him, especially for kind of taking down one of the major planets in the crime ring, and whether it's not just the Pikes, but the way the symbiosis of the crime world works. There's going to be a lot of syndicates upset that Tatooine is now, or at least Mos Espa is now off the table when it comes to the drug trade. So I would like to see more of that in the future, whether he's taking on like Black Sun or Crimson Dawn, or just bounty hunters who are out of work. I'd like to see more. Again, the show kind of crammed in a lot of the plot points I think could have been developed really nicely over a couple seasons of a show into one. We could also touch on the Tuskens, maybe do some more stuff with Tusken tribes, and how he unites them with the kind of the people of the cities. There's things that we can reach on for plot threads, but for me personally, if there is a season 2, I would like it to be more focused on Boba's past, the stuff that we really got hinted at, and the fact that Cad Bane's last words are, "I knew you were always a killer." I want to see that side of him. I want to see those people who really are like afraid of him come out, right? Because now all these people love him and Mos Espa, but there's another part of the really an entire part of the galaxy who still knows Boba Fett as the Boba Fett that we know him as, and I would like to see some of that come back to haunt him as he tries to settle this planet down for good. So that's where I would take season 2 if we're jumping off from this point. Do you have any thoughts on that, or have a direction you'd like to see it go?
Well, I mean, he's gone straight. I think that if that's one thing the show has done is that he's really committed to being straight. Like, he's not gonna do anything that's of bad taste. If people have something to say, he's gonna listen. He's gonna enforce it as best as he can, right? He's gonna give people opportunities. He's very much kind of bought into like this whole idea of a tribe and looking out for each other, and he's really come in line with a lot of the values of the people who he once probably hunted down and disintegrated himself, but now he's had a change of heart. It's for all that he could have done at the end. All it took was a blind man to knock him into a pit and reversed his entire fortunes. Like, no matter how skilled he is, all this and that, no one was going to come there to help him out. No one's there going to save him. He has enemies all around. Like, for some people, it was better that he was dead, right? But now he's back. He spent years in a life that I think he would have very much settled very into. But obviously the Pikes stripped that opportunity of that from him. So now he's kind of back in this fight. But he does say something pretty interesting because after this up and down, very messy season, yes, he's got the palace. He's the daimyo of Mos Espa. Everything has been good. But it seems like he has this kind of like words. He's like, this doesn't feel like what I should be doing. Like, it almost feels like it's not meta, but it's like almost like at the very end, whenever they're like reshoots or something, Favreau and Filoni must have been like, "Man, this is not what we really meant for this to be. Let's make a little joke like maybe we have to do something more with Boba." Maybe I'm throwing my own just thoughts into it. Yeah, for sure. Um, but I think it's interesting because he says like it doesn't feel like exactly what I should be doing. I feel like this I need to be doing something else. Like this, he wanted to be this crime lord to have this tribe, but that part of him was unfortunately only a small part of him, influential as it may be. And he did bring justice to Mos Espa, but he doesn't seem entirely satisfied. So I can see if there is a season 2, that complexity of like when he has to make these harder decisions, because now he's cleared out the obvious bad, but it's like those really gray areas that eventually kind of seep into any sort of empire or democracy and all that. It's when it starts getting complicated and all that. I think that's what's like the real next step for Boba. So I could see if that season 2 happens, he has to like maybe take missions um, for Chrysanthemum to take on with like a Trandoshan or something, right? Because it's for the benefit of Mos Espa for Freetown or whatever. But why would Chrysanthemum want to do that after being jumped by a bunch of them with his whole history of being part of like their whole fighting circuit and just the natural animosity or something like that? Maybe he has to do something with the mod squad and they don't really like the choices that they're making. There's going to be a lot of interconflicts between that's already kind of been hinted at between like the people who live in like a Freetown sort of area, the outskirts of kind of like boonies versus people who live in the city. There's a lot more complexity to, I'm assuming Boba's expanding reach on Tatooine. As much good as he wants to bring, he himself is going to make a lot more choices that I think eventually don't suit him. I think I could see him being tied more into the Mandalorian storyline. Eventually, maybe there's a whole like scene where he's like, "Do you really believe that stuff about the creed to Mando?" And with the whole complexity with Mando, the fact that he still believes in that creed, I know he's like Boba's kind of saying like, "Okay, good, because you're not leaving me, or else I for sure die." Now I got a strong chance of only maybe limping my way out of this. But there's a part of me that thinks that maybe he also says that because he respects and honors what Din is doing, but he also maybe wants to see if there's something more that could motivate me to do so much more. Maybe like that stuff that my father was once part of, even though he left it. Maybe there's a place for me in that. I could really see that being a way to tie in Boba. I would love more than anything to just see the people's reactions of Mando season 3 and just a full Boba Fett episode as he just like comes, leaves Mos Espa or does something like that. I don't know. It seems a little illogical, but I could really see that happening. I think Fennec and Boba, to a degree, they're a good partnership, but I could see very much them kind of separating on good terms. I could see Fennec kind of being like, "This isn't your place," right? But maybe I could become comfortable with this because she very much was saying like that orange powder is like we make so much money that is the majority of your wealth. How you can't just do that, even if Boba is doing the right thing. Your money source is still your money source. So like what's going to go on as things become tighter, more that maybe there's some conflict between them. Maybe that's what adds a little bit more complexity. Maybe we start seeing a little bit more of like the Godfather, the Don sort of stuff, like where he can exert his influence and really help people versus where he's kind of weighed down more like Godfather 2 by the decisions that he has to make. And maybe there's that conflict between what he's tried to be, the straight lawman who's doing what he can for people, and the killer that Cad Bane tries to remind him of just before he kills him himself. Right? Like there's a lot of different things that ultimately I think would have been interesting to actually have done in season 1. But if there is a season 2, I think that's really where they're gonna go to really contrast from like here's his own sort of hero's journey mixed in with some Mandos and Mandoverse and Star Wars setup. But now we come back to this world. Is he really still the hero of it? Does he really enjoy his own place in it? Is there things that he wishes could be different? Are there things that he's had to make these choices for that are now starting to bite him in the ass a little bit? Like, I want to see that explored if that comes back.
Yeah, and that's where this show could have touched on that in so many varieties as well, and we're reaching to do it in a season 2. But when it comes to the Mandalorian stuff, I was always of the opinion, and I still am, that I think it's all going to be done in Mandalorian. I think I would very much like to see Boba connect to his roots a bit more, discover that Jango Fett heritage. It's been a huge part of him in the Clone Wars that he kind of seems to pick the side of Jango as a criminal versus Jango as a man. I'd love to see him, now that he is away from the crime world, start to embrace more of the humanity of his father, try to rediscover who that identity was, why this man was not just a great bounty hunter, but was so important to the galaxy at large, so important that the Kaminoans made him the template for the clones. There's a lot of stuff that could be done with the Fett legacy. And it very well could be season 2 of Book of Boba Fett, because these shows are playing off each other so much. But I think all of the groundwork for that would have to definitely be laid in The Mandalorian first. I don't think we're going to see an entire episode of Book of Boba Fett about it. But again, like, there's one thing with Boba being like a good crime lord, someone who rules with respect. But it's another thing to just be like, no, I'm not doing anything with crime in general. And that's kind of what they did at the end of this episode, which is completely a 180 from him as a character, just in general, like with what we know about what he does. That to me feels like the most complete thing that they gave the arc, where he is now transformed into this kind ruler. To me, that's where I don't see him pursuing any of this stuff from his past. Right. I think it's going to come to him, and he's going to have to deal with it. That's where I think, if there's a season 2, it will go. But yeah, I think the crime stuff in general, I wanted to see a bit more of that, where you can try to humanize a crime lord, try to compare him to the other people, how he treats his people. But again, it's hard to do that because you could get walked all over if you're a nice crime boss. Like that, those just seem very, like, they're antonyms basically. Like you really can't be. I mean, you can be like Godfather-esque, where it's all in the family and you love your family and all of that type of stuff. But Boba doesn't have the family aspect to it. He's got Finnick, right? So you can love everybody, but as Michael shows in Godfather Part 2, even family can disappoint you, and you got to deal with them when they do. And so, in that regard, I wanted to see Boba take on a bit more of that role, be still ruthless, but yet be not like he could be good
Yeah,
but ruthless.
yeah,
And I think Boba can, and he could embody the best and worst qualities of a bounty hunter, but skew them in a way to make him look like an anti-hero, where this show now is trying to make him look like he's a hero. But we still have the whole thing about the underworld being what I thought the show was going was this was setting up the underworld for our finale, right? Because we don't have an underworld aspect to the Mandalorian or any of these shows, especially with the Mandalorian now pursuing his Mandalorian heritage more. That underworld aspect that was in the first couple episodes of season 1 is now gone. Boba Fett, I thought, was going to resurrect that because of, and it doesn't have to be a one-to-one adaptation, but if we are adapting Heir to the Empire, the underworld is such an important part of that. And not just that, but really pretty much every era of Star Wars, the underworld plays a significant role in the general politics of the two governments going after each other as well. There is going to be a facet of underworld there. I thought Boba was going to bring that back, but if he's not tied to the underworld, or we don't get a season 2 that changes that to where now he's retied to the underworld, I don't think he's going to be our talent card of of our adaptation, which I thought is where they were kind of skewing this, was that Boba, especially his connection to the clones, all of that would fit so well together. But I don't see that really happening without a major shift in what they've done with him in season 2. And again, it all has to go back to he's just when he tries to get out, they pull me right back in, and it has to come back or down to a season 2 that really gets him back into the underworld and lights that fire and hit him again that seems to be kind of settled.
yeah. I mean, he is a good guy at this point. What a mean streak! He's gonna kill Nictos Peter guys. He's gonna have rancors eat people and all that. But I don't know. I don't. I know Cad Bane is killed, but upon a quick rewatch, there is a strange beeping noise after you like kind of pan over his body and see him dead. It could just be some sort of like defibrillator kind of built in to kickstart his heart and he'll crawl away or something.
Don't give me hope.
Who knows? I That beeping noise was not there before, so maybe he's still alive. Maybe maybe that's he's reappears, right? I don't know. It's weird because like I feel like they would have made it a little bit more obvious than just like a little beep beep, but maybe they're trying to keep it really under wraps. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more else to add. I would say it'd be very interesting if maybe an almost I mean, I'd like to see Boba kind of evolve into a sort of clan Fett if he's not really gonna be like a ruler, if he finds this whole business to be something he can't really fit into. I know Fennec says, "If not us, who else?" Right? Think about that. Like we are the best that they can offer, right? Sure, but if he's perhaps more organized into his background, into his father, into a little bit more with the Mandalorian culture, an independent clan of sorts, right? That could be called upon one necessary, that has a bit more of a financial incentive behind it, but still has good morals and values, I think could be a very interesting place to go for him. That being said, this first season is not very subtle or like sophisticated in its execution, and that's not a type of story I want to see Robert Rodriguez direct. I would love anyone else to really become the showrunner. I was not impressed with him as a showrunner. I think this was a showrunner position. If it was old present day, he would have done much better one because it feels very much like a little Western B film that he could have pulled off, like the nameless hero becoming this like good person staying in town. Maybe that I think he could have pulled that off. But there's so much complexity with the flashbacks, with trying to bring in all this Mandalorian elements that he was only so-so and it was very messy at all points. so that if there is a season 2 with these complexities that we want out of its character, this syndicate stuff, this underworld stuff, I he's not the guy for it in my mind. Not that I have anything against him, I just don't think Star Wars is his flavor, and because his flavor is just not necessarily what Star Wars fans want, and that comes down with the complexities of, like, if you're a Star Wars fan, you expect different things from Star Wars. A prequel fan expects something different from an original trilogy fan who expects something different from a sequel fan. But he feels like he's done enough to make everyone of every era be like, "I liked it, just I liked everyone else's episodes a bit more in terms of execution direction." So, hell, I would love to see Bryce Dallas Howard take over, like, a Book of Boba Fett season 2, because just the depth and, like, the darkness that she showed with Mando, and that even if it is writing, she still has to make the actor who's presumably the stunt double, and she has to tell Pedro Pascal how to really, like, sink into those, like, more, like, unsettling moments, and there's not really anything too unsettling with Boba here that I feel like a season 2 can really get into that again, that you are good, but you're always that killer. Maybe that thought that he's Cad Bane has left him behind, the complexities, the changes that are going on with him. Sure, he wants to maybe do his own clan, maybe he wants to step away from the daimyo life, or maybe he wants to get even deeper into it, but there's complexities with his family of sorts that he keeps around him. Again, who knows? But a lot of that is, like, mute if that finality of this whole season is definite. I hope it's not, because I really think Tamora Morrison, when he really got to chew on something, killed it. Like, his moments with Din, his moments in the show with Cad Bane, when he gets to talk, when he gets to his action, embodies it. But he's let down by a script that is very uneven and prioritized making this into a Mando 2.5. Make this into a true season 2, I'm on board. Otherwise, fine. I'm more than happy with the moving on and letting Boba just show up in these crossover ones when he needs to be back.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think season 3 of Mandalorian, regardless of all the stuff we mentioned here, will set the tone. I think we'll get an announcement sooner rather than later whether there will be a season 2 or not. But even if there is a season 2, Mandalorian season 3 will 100% set the tone for what it will be about. And I think we have the possibility to go into Boba Fett more so than Mos Espo, which is what we did in this show. And I think that is a rich opportunity that, you know, we've not had before. And I feel like it would be definitely a missed opportunity to not pick that up and keep the ball rolling and really take the things that worked about the show this season and improve them and add more humanity to them and more stuff, because you could argue the Tusken stuff is the most human stuff we get in this whole show, and then it's kind of abandoned and we never really get back to it. That was the core of this show. That was the emotional core. But the way that episodes are stitched together, it's hard to call back to what we saw 6 weeks ago in the finale when it hasn't been brought up again in 6 weeks. So anyway, those are our thoughts on a possible Book of Boba Fett season 2. Maybe tomorrow it will be announced that there is a season 2 or there's not going to be a season 2. We'll see, but hopefully I personally would really like to see a season 2, just because I think there is so much potential for the character of Boba Fett to be something else besides a guy who stands on the side or shows up for big events and fights in big, huge action scenes. Like, I think there's so much potential for this character out there from a story perspective and a character perspective that we have yet to touch on. So let us know down below what you think of our thoughts on a possible season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. Also, let us know what you would do if you were doing season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett and where you think this might go, as well as how it ties into Mandalorian season 3. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.